Welcome to Empower to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Al-Basha. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your new episode of Empower to Grow in Business podcast. This is your host, Hanan Al-Basha. I'm so excited to have today's discussion because it's with one of my favorite people ever. Well, actually, there are two, but he is becoming another favorite person of mine. Today's conversation is with Lara Khouri and Rajeev Daswani, and we're going to be talking about something that doesn't naturally come up in business conversations. Things like self-aware, empathy, other qualities that make up leaders and CEOs and people who have the vision for the business. And I'm so excited to hear their views and their expertise, for them to share their expertise with everyone on the call. Without further ado, I will bring them on stage. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, guys. How are you? Thank you so much for being here today. I know you are on a business trip, so you're outside of Dubai, but you made the time. So I'm super grateful for you guys. And I'm really, really excited about this conversation.
So are we. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. So
you are my favorite person too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So yes, in case I hadn't kind of pointed it out before, Lara is one of my favorite people ever. And, when we first connected through Playbook, another amazing network that we're in, I think we connected, we got on a call that lasted like 2 hours, and then we met in person in Dubai. And that lasted like a good 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. I'm like, oh my God, where did the time go? So alignment and serendipity at its best. So I'm grateful to have you in my life. Rajeev, it's always a pleasure. So I'm going to start with you, Rajeev. So please just introduce yourself to people, so in case they don't know who you are and what you do.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me here. And being here with her is fun because she finishes the sentences that I start. But in a very summarized fashion, I'm the founder of HCC. We co-founded something called the CEO Maker. And I also was the founder of an engineering company back in the day as well. And so business has been something I've been involved with. Leadership has been something I've been involved with. And now we're living our passion by helping other leaders show up through this journey in the CEO Maker and HCC. Over to Lara.
Well, thank you, Rajeev. It's really beautiful, honestly, how Rajeev and I came together. So we were actually at school with each other 30-something years ago, giving away our ages, as if the white hair didn't already do that.
It's all across. We're mature, wise people. That's okay.
Yeah, wisdom highlights. I call them wisdom highlights. And we've had very different paths. So Rajeev has been a business owner and running a business for many years. I did the sort of more typical work my way up the corporate ladder to get to a leadership position. And the thing is, both of our journeys brought us to a point where we saw in each other this mutual understanding that leadership could and must be different. The world needs a different kind of leadership now. What worked 20 years ago does not work now. And I mean, I know a lot of people say this, COVID really changed the leadership game. And that's actually how Rajeev and I got started on this journey to developing the CEO Makers. We were on a podcast during COVID talking about, well, what does this mean for leadership? And that's where really it showed the alignment that we had. And that's when we thought, you know what, we're going to do something about this. So we did.
Yeah. I love that. Well, let's start with that. Rajeev, what's the CEO Maker? I mean, it is interesting. So I'm going to be muting and unmuting you guys just in case we get the echo. So
Brilliant.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I mean, the CEO Maker is something we came up with. We call it a journey. It's a leadership journey. It's an empathy-based, business-focused leadership journey, right? And the whole idea is to help organizations develop the next generation of leaders. So not only leaders in the title-based leaders, but even your everyday person who has to bring leadership to work in their everyday job, right? We forget that every single one of us owns the job, owns the title or the position you have. And you have to show up the best that you can in that position, and you have to lead through example in that position. So no matter what you do, you have to build your leadership traits. The CEO Maker is about finding that, right? Finding that little essence of leadership in everything that you do, and making you understand that everybody in your organization should be CEO minded, right? Have the same mindset. So this organization develops on three main aspects, and I'm going to pass it on very soon to her, because it's fun to hear different voices. But three real aspects that we try to tackle is, awareness of self. So you get to know who you are better. Awareness of self in relation to others. And the final magic is, now that you know how you're showing up, how do you start to embed different traits so you can show up as a leader in your own life and in your workplace? Yeah. Now to expand on that, pass it off here.
Okay.
Just riff
Lara,
off of
I
Rajeev.
want
Yeah,
you to, I actually want you to touch on something before you move on, please, that
sure.
Rajeev's mentioned. And this is something that I found very intriguing, and that's how you headline it. The CEO Maker is an empathy-based program. Now, talk about empathy when it comes to leadership, and then kind of give us a bit more details on what Rajeev was discussing.
Okay, of course. What we noticed during our journeys is that leadership tended to be confused or used synonymously with a title. So if you didn't have a certain title, you weren't a leader. And if you did have a certain title, you were a leader. And
Okay.
through that journey, through our life journey, we noticed that more and more the people that we would describe as leaders and that others around would describe as leaders weren't necessarily the ones who had a title. They were the ones who made other people feel empowered. They made other people feel resourceful, productive, appreciated, valued. And that was something that was our first aha was, okay, there's this shift that's coming.
Yeah.
And the other shift that happened was we started noticing that people who had the titles but didn't have what we call, we as people in general, what we refer to as people, right? So, oh, he's not a people person.
Yeah.
The people who had the title of executive vice president of this, that, or the other, but weren't the people who had the skills to make others feel appreciated and valued and seen and supported. They were the leaders that people didn't want to work with, that people wanted actually to move away from.
Yep.
And so when we started developing the CEO Maker, we thought, well, the first thing we have to do is develop a way for people to gain that self-awareness. Let these leaders see what it is that other people see in them.
Okay.
Get them to see inside themselves so that first of all, they lead themselves with empathy. Because something that we noticed as well is it's lonely at the top. But
it is.
It's also not a space where leaders with the title felt safe being in any way vulnerable, because everybody, whether they liked or they didn't like that leader, these people were all looking to this person for direction, for answers, for guidance. It's a lot of pressure. And so we thought, well, the first thing is self-awareness, so that the leaders get to understand themselves better and lead themselves from a place of empathy, love themselves and lead themselves with love. And then show that love to other people and lead other people with love. So that's why we call it empathy based, because that's how we start. We get that foundation and we go from there.
Absolutely love it. And from my personal journey, and I know this is something that we spoke about a lot, and it is realizing that my vulnerability and my authenticity are superpowers rather than something that I took as, oh, it's a weakness. I'm too soft, or I expose a lot, and I'm an open book. But more importantly, and that part about the self-awareness is realizing sometimes that when you understand yourself, you can show up as an even better leader. And things that you would assume are, like everyone knows this. This is like, your core competences and stuff. When you listen and open up, and I think that's the part we were just talking about, opening up to how people view you and how you can empower yourself and how you can grow internally is so important, because else you would have thought, that's not special. You know, everyone does that.
Yeah.
No, not everyone does that. And they could be doing it, but they do it differently. And I think that is an important trait. Rajeev, what kind of experiences have people had when they're going through the program, in which you are seeing, especially from the part is you were mentioning, and I think Lara mentioned it at the beginning, is the shift post-pandemic. I call it BC. Was it call it BC and
Right,
AP?
right.
Well,
Well,
AP.
I think it's a great question, and I always reflect first on our own experience, because this has come from our own journey as leaders as well, right? So it's understanding that when you go through we call it. I have a really nice example. I always use the word mirror, and I say, think of self-awareness as a bunch of mirrors, right? You look at the mirror and you see what you already know about yourself, and you look at it's the stuff you're used to. But the mirror also shows you things that you've never seen. Now, what happens once you see them, right? So think, whatever you call the title, whatever the person is, once anybody sees something they've never seen before, now they can't unsee it. Now they've seen it. Now what do you do with that? What do you do with that new information? Well, if that new information serves you in any way, use that to propel yourself forward. If that information doesn't serve you in any way, let it go, right? But be conscious about it, right? The game changer in the game of awareness is consciousness. Are you more conscious? Are you able to understand yourself in a more loving manner, and the whole self, right? So for us, what was really important when we bring it to corporates is and what Lara said beautifully, was empathy. When you think about what we expect from others, when we get into that space where we want to feel others and make sure that they feel safe as well as ourselves, it always starts with you first understanding what is safe for you look like, right? So self-awareness for us, for me in my own experience, I know Lara for you as well, it was an aha moment for us to see some of the things that were, that we had not seen before. Some things that made us feel safe, some that made us feel vulnerable. But once we got there, we understood how it felt to be there. Now that you know that, what are you going to do with it, right? Now to add to that, that's one aha, right? And we've seen that with ourselves first, and we've seen other people go through that aha moment. But what's really beautiful is once you see that in yourself, it's something magical happens, Hanan, you start to see it easier in others. And when they step in a different place, you can start to accept that, because you accept a new part of yourself, and now you can accept somebody standing somewhere else, and you bring the same kindness to both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I absolutely love that.
I don't know if that answered your question, but that was an experience that we've seen.
But that also could be a double-edged sword. And I'll tell you what my view is. Sometimes self-awareness is synonymous with self-criticism. Now I can see all the good things about me, but I can also see I'm not a people's person. And now everyone knows that. How do you, I don't want to call it strike a balance, but how does the self-awareness that these are my strengths and these are areas for improvement, development, evolution, and how do you handle that within the program?
I love that question. I do, because it goes to the heart of the empathy-based part of the program, which is you see yourself and then you see others, and you gain that understanding of we all have imperfections, let's say. We all have areas that could use development. And so that realization helps people be kinder to themselves, but also to other people. And so they start leading from a space of appreciation for the person's strengths and what they can do, rather than a place of, I don't know what word to use, judgment. Yeah, judgment. Rather than judging them like, oh, this person would be a great marketing manager if only they could do 1, 2, 3. And instead of that, they go, you know what, this person is a great marketing manager because they put in the work to understand the business so that they know how to talk about it well, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So, Rajeev, if you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, it beautifully said, Laura. And just the last point to what she just added was they start to receive everyone from where they are, as opposed to where they want them to be. And then that's the game changer. Is in any organization, first it's with yourself, accept where you are and head to where you want to be, but be in control of that journey. And part two, is understand that everyone's on the same journey. So accept where they're at and take exactly what she said, see their traits where they stand and use that as their gift, their uniqueness. That's what makes us special. Everyone is different in their own beautiful way.
Yeah.
And when we embrace that, it changes the energy of the space around you.
I love that. Do you see from the work you've been doing, and I know you're a transformative coach as well, how does this reflect now? Again, CEOs are chief executive officers. They are leaders in businesses where we want results and there are revenues and there are KPIs and everything else. How does this transition from the self-awareness to the results part? How do we start, or have you started witnessing shifts in strategic directions, in executional plans, and everything else related to it?
Absolutely, because everything comes down to once you know yourself better, how do you end up becoming? Well, you become more productive, more competent. There's all kinds of metrics you can start to measure, right? Like in any business, right? There's numbers and there's measurements for everything, right? As long as you know where you're starting from, where you're headed. The game changer is you just have more information now to work with, right? And you have more facets of yourself that you can start to use towards hitting those markers, right? So, for example, how many times have all of us, and this is not just the every person, all of us set objectives, we have KPIs, some you hit, some you don't hit, right?
Yeah.
But what's the game changer? The game changer is the mindset behind it. What happens when you do not, right? What happens when you do? How do you celebrate it? Do you celebrate it? Or is it, nope, that's not good enough, next one, right? I mean, mindset is everything. Do you accept where you're at and where you need to go?
Proponent for mindset, true.
All of us, right? And so the good news is, this is really about bringing the I back, and then from I to we. And the we is always connected with the overall outcome of where your organization is or where you want to go, right? So ultimately, everything is aligned. Because what ends up happening is we sort of compartmentalize things. So this is what my business has to do. This is what my personal targets are. This is what I have to do in my life. And we think, okay, these are all separate, right? But in reality, once you start to bring more understanding of who you are and where you show up, you start to see how each part of you can start to do better, right? And like you said rightfully, once you measure it, you get to move the marker where you need it to go. Does that help explain that?
Yeah. And now we've looked at it, as you said, from self-awareness. So I'm a leader. Now I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of the team that's around me and their core competences and their areas where I don't want to say just see beyond them, but also, see where they're shining through or where they need the support and everything else. Lara, your expertise as well is in CX, customer experiences. Let's talk about the beyond now, where we're beyond the parameters of the business and we're expanding to the stakeholders, the customers. Well, that was a question. Let's talk about the impact of that.
I was going to say, that is a question that is actually on everyone's mind right now. And there is a lot of research that shows that happy employees equal happy customers and vice versa. Happy customers equal happy employees. What the work that we're doing allows people to be empowered to find their own happiness. Too many times, and this is just a thing of humanity, many times we put our happiness in someone else's hands. Like if you're boyfriend, girlfriend, for instance, if you love me, then I'll be happy, right? Yeah. Or even someone like Santa Claus, if you give me a gift, I will love you.
Guilty. Yep.
Right. And with knowing yourself on the level that we can take the awareness to, there exists a love for oneself that is not dependent on anyone else. So people are coming to work just happy, just because they now love themselves, they understand themselves, and they are happier. And what that does is then it's this ripple effect, right? If I'm happy, I'm going to smile at you when I walk into work. If I work in, say, a restaurant or somewhere else, if I'm happy, I'm going to smile at you when you walk into the restaurant. So that's part of giving a great customer experience. There's a group that we worked with, and this is one of my favorite examples of the impact of what we've done. There were two ladies that we were working with. Now, imagine sort of what is now a typical open setting in an office, right? You've got everybody on these long desks with drawers in between them and these separators, the panels and
Yeah.
all of that. And two ladies, we were working with them separately as part of a leadership development journey. And one of them came to us one day with this huge smile and said, "You
Yeah.
will never guess what we've done." So, well, what, first of all, who's we? And second of all, what have you done? And she
Yeah.
said, "Well, my colleague and I sit next to each other at work. And we realized a couple of days ago that these drawers that are in between us are actually hindering us from speaking to each other because we see it as a barrier. So
Okay.
we moved them." I said, "Okay." And and now that we've moved them, we talk to each other a lot more. We ask each other a lot more for guidance, for advice. We run things past each other. And going back to your question about the CX element, these ladies were responsible for putting events together for their customers. So the fact
Okay.
that they are able now to talk to each other more seamlessly, they feel more open to discussing things with each other, has elevated their customer experience with them. And so
Wow.
going to the CX, but it was really a wow moment for both of us. Like even such
Yeah.
a tiny thing,
I was just about to
like
say,
removing
it's a
drawers.
small, yeah, it's a small physical object, but it's amazing. And this is going back again to the mindset part, Rajiv,
Mhm.
that a small physical object that is functional within an office space could actually become a block in your mind of collaboration and in kind of doing things together and to elevate a wholesome experience.
Yeah, it was honestly, yeah, it was a huge aha for us.
One of the most powerful things to add to what she says is also the element that when you go through journeys like this, you start to become more open and empathetic to everybody. So you
Yeah.
start to see the beauty in all the people around, even your customers. You start to see the differences. The thing is, it makes differences normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you do journeys like this, you start to see when people stand in different places,
That's true.
that's their perception. You know, it opens you up to that. And that by itself has its own magic, right? The way
Yeah.
you treat them changes because you know what their needs are now. And you can address that better.
And yet, I'm going to play the devil's advocate over here.
Of course.
Sometimes empathy and being, how people sometimes are overly empathetic, that actually also is a drawback because I know this person is going through something on the family matter, so I'm not going to push them. I know this person had a bad day, so I'm not going to push them and stuff. And you end up also then putting up too much excuses for others around you, which means that the load is coming on your end because you still have to deliver. Again, we're talking about tangible results. Where do we draw the line between being self-aware and empathetic and being overly empathetic?
You love that question, right? I love your questions. First one, and I want to take a second to say, love, love, love your questions. We both are
Thank you.
jumping up and down.
I
Inside more than
appreciate
outside, because we don't want the viewers to get a headache. But to answer your question, and I'm going to leave a lot for her to answer too, because I know she loved this one. The powerful thing is, it's all about learning to manage yourself, and
Yeah.
understand that all of these things that what they do for you is they bring more clarity for you to better understand and manage yourself. And
Yeah.
the truth is, once this happens, you already start to automatically understand that boundary, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you don't know something, you might be doing more of something or less of something because you don't know, right?
Yeah.
But once you see it clearly, now you know, well, this works for me, this doesn't. This is the
Okay.
line I draw. This is not pulling me out of my comfort zone. That's the game changer. We've seen it between ourselves as well. We've seen how, you know, changes in situation circumstances can take us in different spaces on the map that we're talking about. We always talk about this map, but it's
Yeah.
about, you know, how you're showing up, and your behaviors will change as a result of that, and your needs and the way you see the world will change. And when you see that, based on that, you react or respond to things differently now, right?
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it teaches you to manage better. It doesn't answer your question. Yes, it
Yeah.
teaches you to manage
Yeah.
better, so you don't have that situation. All right.
Okay.
To add to what Rajiv was saying, and he's right, this is my favorite part. I do love this. With it's going back to what Rajiv said about the mirror, right?
Mhm.
With what we do, we hold that mirror up. Being overly empathetic is something that people learn to see in that mirror. If they have that tendency, eventually through the work that we do with them, they will get to the point, because we never lead, right? All we
Yeah.
do is guide. We
Yeah.
ask questions and they give the answers. And it's through their answers that the self-awareness, it's not us telling them, oh, well, we saw you do this, so therefore we deduce and conclude that you are 1, 2, 3. It's not
Yeah.
like that at all. It's more, well, how did you feel in that situation? What do you feel was beneficial, or what was the learning you got out of that situation? And through those answers, they gain the self-awareness. And so through that journey, they are the ones who start saying, wait a minute, I'm really not doing anyone any favor. I'm taking on too much. Oh, this isn't going to, yeah, I give too much. And so, all right, now you have that realization. Great. How do we make that your superpower rather than what you are currently perceiving it to be, which is a burden? And
Yeah.
so they get that realization, and then we help them, we guide them on what to do with that realization. As Rajeev always says, we can show you the mirror, but then what you do with what you see is completely up to you. Our role is just as a guide.
Okay. So that's the interesting part there. So then that's my next question, actually. So the program again is structured, is has a certain time to it and everything else. The follow-up, who gets, understand, of course, you get the results, but as we all know, evolution of us as human beings is an ongoing journey. How do we ensure the guidance continues and that the results are sustainable? How have you kind of factored that into the program?
I love the question. I love the question. And it's a question like saying, and I'll make it akin to this: growth doesn't stop, learning doesn't stop. You continue to learn. How do you know
Yeah.
you've stopped learning once you've learned something new? You don't. You continue to learn, right?
Yeah.
So think of
Yeah.
it this way: it's an ongoing journey, right? You're just opening your eyes and your perception to seeing yourself fully. And once you see yourself fully, you keep on growing with that. So everything that comes out moving forward is adding layers for you, right? And there's, how many layers can you add? You can continue to add layers, right? Because you can't, I mean, learning doesn't stop, right, Hannah? That's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah, that's the whole point of it.
right, that's the whole point of it. So what happens? How does it work? Well, what I've noticed is everything's moving you one step forward. Now, here's a question: how far do you need to go? What does that look like? For every person, it's different.
Yep.
For
Yeah.
every person we have worked with, they have a different journey. The thing is, this is the beautiful thing about the journey. It's paced for them to decide where they are at and where they need to go,
Yeah.
right? It unifies everyone because everyone is able to see themselves. Empathy, because now you see others and they see how they see you. It makes you very humble, right?
Yeah.
Because not
Yeah.
everything is what it perceived to be. But once you know that, how does that propel you forward? Nothing changes. You continue to, when I say nothing changes, I mean nothing in your control changes. Now you still have the control, but now you have a lot more to use with that control. You can do a lot more with it because you have so many more resources within you to manage
Yeah.
things better, right? And like what learning
Yeah.
does, you have learning. Now learning to embed that learning is where the game is, isn't it?
That's true, and that is the fact that the journey is ongoing. There isn't an end line. It's like, oh, I've kind of evolved now, or I've healed, or whatever, and it's like I'm done. Because I know I had this conversation with my sister, one of my sisters. She calls me up. She's like, I thought I did better. I worked on this and stuff, and I'm like, and she's like, when does it end? And I'm like, sorry to tell you, it's not going to end. You reach. And that's an important thing. And Lara, I want you to address that. Setting milestones, especially as a leader, as a CEO, how do you set milestones that are, achievable, that are measurable, that you can understand? And as Rajeev was started by saying, that you're able to celebrate yourself. Oh, I've reached this milestone. I know for me, it was very important because I remember my reaction time when I started this healing transformative journey like 6-7 years ago. My reaction time if something negative happened in my life, well, there was a time where it lasted 2 years. Let's not go there. But now it's like, okay, it could be a couple of days, it could be a couple of hours. And I've celebrated that evolution. But within, whether we're looking at the CEO Maker, or even within everyone who's listening to us now who is not part of the CEO Maker program, how can we set our own milestones and be able to celebrate them one way or another?
Okay. That's a question that is going to, that's one of those questions where the answer is it depends, right?
Yeah.
It depends on, because it depends first and foremost on our definition of success, right? Everyone has a different definition of success. So
Yes.
understanding what your personal definition of success is the first step. And what we usually do with people is when, and this isn't only people who run the CI, I do this with my sisters as well, bless them, and I know Rajeev does it as well with his kids, is understand what does success look like to you, okay? So what does it take to achieve the success that you want? And sometimes some people can work towards, but for some people, reverse engineering is a better way of doing it. So either way, it's put those steps. What do you need to achieve? Because the huge goal at the end, what we've found when we were in leadership positions, but also with the leaders that we work with, is it sometimes can feel very overwhelming. There are days when you think, you know, you're full of confidence, you've had a great day, it's wonderful, yes, I can achieve this. And there are days where you've had a bad day, something's happened at life or at work, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. This is not going to happen. I'm not up to this challenge.
Yeah.
But when you have a piece of paper or a tablet or whatever it is, where you've made your notes of this is my ultimate goal, and these are the steps that it's going to take to achieve them, then you can see, first of all, how small some of those steps are and how simple they are. And that's how you start to, you know, there's that thing about celebrate the small wins. Celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
What we see as a small win is a step closer to that big win that we're aiming for. So the small wins are big wins. And also the second thing is we don't go away. When we're working with people and even with our friends or whoever, the program is over and people aren't necessarily on the program anymore, but they still have our phone numbers and they still have our email addresses and they still do call us up to say, hi, we'd like to meet for a coffee. So there is still that checking in that we now offer as friends.
Yeah.
And I'll add one thing really interesting, and then just to circle this off.
Please.
End of the day, like she said correctly, success is not always about just hitting that one outcome, but it's also celebrating the steps towards that outcome, because sometimes that is the movement is so important, you know. So rightfully said, it looks different for everyone, and it really does depend, and that's the game changer.
I keep always, this is something that shifted big time for me, and that's why I always keep talking about it. And it's the concept of subjective success. You know, putting what does success mean to you and putting those parameters that are relevant to you, rather than what society dictates that this success looks like. It's the title, it's the position, it's the bank account, you know, the car, the home, and everything else that comes along with it. So I'm totally on board with what you're saying. And I want to also take it a step further. Now, that part that Lara said is like, we don't go away. We are there to support and everything. Let's talk from, again, being self-aware, being empowered with tools and information and all the assessments and everything else. And especially from your perspective, Rajeev, as a coach, the importance of having someone, whether it's a coach or a consultant or actually it would be coach or advisor, like someone that kind of you can share ideas with, you can brainstorm, they can see things you can't see. I call them the blind spots, your blind spots and stuff. How important is that in an executive's life, professionally and personally?
Again, love the question, and the answer is very important, right? But I take you back for a second. It's everyone.
Yeah.
How important is it for every one of us to feel seen, heard, and supported, right?
Yes.
I mean, in today's world, everything's moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. When can you slow things down so someone can just say, wait, this is about you, right?
Yeah.
And you play the role that you need to play with a coach. You can see the clarity that you need, and hold the space for you. But the key element here is, how do you hold the space? And that's what me and Lara have come together to do, is hold the space, right? And as coaches, when you do that, sometimes not moving is okay for them, because that's where they need to be at that point in time for them to get more clarity and then figure out what the next step looks like when they're ready to move forward, right?
Yeah.
That's the empathy part, right? The empathy part is that everybody's different, everybody's at a different space, they have different needs and wants. And are you able to do that with the grace of really saying, listen, this is your time. You figure out what feels right for you to do what you need to do. And at the same time, push them the way they need to be pushed, because that's where they want to be pushed, right? Or
Yeah.
they're asking for that. Fair? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Lara, I feel like you want to add something.
Um, this is a beautiful time to come into the part that we haven't yet spoken about very explicitly, which is the business focus, right? So when we're working with people and we are looking to understand their definition of success, it's about their definition of success according to them as people and according to the role that they have at work.
Yeah.
And one of
So
the
the
first things,
contextual success for
yes,
them.
exactly, exactly. And one of the very first things that we do is we identify a challenge with them. So there was one person, for instance, that we worked with, and his challenge was around his temper. He gets riled up really easily. Well, okay, so what is the business impact of someone who has a temper and gets riled up easily? They
Sure,
are less
few.
productive. People don't want
Yeah.
to collaborate with them, right? So even something like a soft skill, like learning how to manage your time, can have a business impact. And
Yeah.
for other people, it is more business focused. Like, okay, my revenue has to be X amount by the end of this financial year or this quarter or whatever it is. And so once that challenge is identified, we do work through that with them as part of the self-awareness journey and as part of the overall context of
Yeah.
who they are in this at this moment in time.
Absolutely love that. There's this part where, I can see how we can, and I know Lara and I could do it easily, where we can expand this for another 2 to 3 hours. And there's a part where I'm like, okay, I'm going to appreciate your time. I'm very grateful for your time. And I'm going to ask my last question. So my last question to both of you, and I will start with you, Lara, is I love getting reflections on empowered to grow in business. So that's the name of the podcast. And I would love to hear from you how this phrase resonates with you on a personal and professional way. Hang on, you need to unmute.
It's a phrase that I truly wish had existed years and years and years ago. I know the beauty of what leadership is evolving into is resulting in. And I wish we'd had that a long time ago as a human community, as a global society. I know that, like you said, you're right, we're evolving, we're always evolving. And empowered to grow as a phrase just is very timely. Because I think, yes, this is exactly what conscious leaders, conscious people, and we say leaders, but really everyone in their own right is a leader. Conscious people, yes, they are being empowered. They're being given the tools, the resources, the mindset, and the space to grow. And I can see that also with parenting. I mean, I see my sister and her husband do that with their kids. I see Rajeev doing that with his kids as well.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah,
It's
I
time.
love that. Rajeev, empowered to grow.
I mean, I have a partner like this, so she's exactly what I believe. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful line. I mean, every part of it is it fills my heart, because empowering is such a precious moment, right? When you can hold the space and help someone feel the power in themselves and then help them to grow, right? And you apply it in business, that looks different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
No matter what
Yeah.
it is knowing that growth is movement. Empowering is giving you the power to take it forward and grow in any way that you feel takes you in that direction. keep on moving and fuel that. It's a fueling. It's so powerful. It fuels me. Just the sentence alone makes me feel really excited and energetic, right? But also makes me feel like, I count, and that we can all make a difference together and create, impact together. And that's the whole game changer, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate both Lara and Rajeev. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the service and from coming from this place of service and from empathy and from talking about things that, a lot of people, as you were saying, Lara, maybe being empowered has had a lot of negative resonance or kind of connotations. People think being empowered means being defiant. But I know that you guys understand what it means to be empowered and come from this place of empathy, which is amazing, but also self-awareness to be able to serve everyone around you and to move the needle forward, not just for yourselves, but also for your businesses and everything across. So once again, thank you so much for being with me. And as always, I know you will get a lot of value from this podcast. For everyone who's watching us, thank you for joining us. And as always, I'm going to see you next week. And I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.